at the launch of these contracts, the Prime Minister said, and I'm just getting it here, he said that this would create lots of local construction jobs in Southwest Ontario, thousands in fact, and it would create lots of local jobs when it comes to the permanent jobs. That this would be, as they called it, the saving of the 100,000 jobs in the auto business that we have in Ontario. And right now, the average cost to save those 3,000 jobs in total in one plant, so total in all of them, is about $5 million a job. And you know, job creating and the important auto pact, the evolution from the auto pact through to the protection of the auto industry and the open markets through the free trade agreement in the United States with the United States passed in 1989, to the further North American free trade agreement, which integrated and guaranteed good union paying auto jobs in Canada as part of the Mexico-Canada-United States relationship on auto production. And I'd say that not only has it produced good jobs, a good stable industry, but it's also produced the best cars in the world. And the government now is engaged in an exercise of catch-up. Not ketchup like you put on your hamburger, but catch up. They're catching up to the IRA, where President Biden caught them flat-footed and said, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to impose a carbon tax in Canada, in the United States like Canada does. That would be foolish because a carbon tax doesn't work. What we're going to do is we're going to invest in technology, not taxes. What an idea. Let's invest in technology and not taxes. So they use something called ITCs, more acronyms, and PTCs, more acronyms. ITCs are called input tax credits, and PTCs are called production tax credits. In other words, government tax breaks to companies that do certain things. And in the IRA, they've put in this clause that said if you assemble EV batteries in the United States to go into EV vehicles assembled in the United States, that you will have a massive subsidy for the next little while. And here's what the IRA says about that subsidy. It's something I guess they don't want us to see in these contracts, whether or not these contracts actually do what they say on this. But the IRA says that between now and the year 2029, 100% of the cost of assembling those batteries will be covered by the taxpayer, 100%. Now, if you're a global company out of Germany or Korea, who wouldn't sign up for that deal? Because you know what? An EV battery is 40% of the cost of the car. So the United States says, no problem, we'll subsidize 40% of the production of the car to the manufacturer, immediately increasing the profitability massively of these expensive vehicles. But since there isn't a market for them, because nobody will pay the retail price of those cars, we'll subsidize the cars on the other end too. So we'll give the consumer a $7,500 a car subsidy. So we're taking a car, if you can believe this, folks, we're taking a car that will sell for $50,000. And we're saying that 40% of that cost, and through 2029, to build that car, the taxpayer will pay for, but the Stellantis, Ford, and Volkswagen will make the profit, 100% profit off that. And then we're going to further subsidize $7,500. So you're talking about, you know, potentially a $25,000 to $30,000 taxpayer subsidy on the cost of a $50,000 vehicle. And the Trudeau government says, sign me up. I think that's a good deal. I'm busy shutting down the resource industries that drive our economy, pay for our health care, pay for everything and the growth that we have. Our greatest global competitive advantage is our natural resources, our oil and gas. our forests, our minerals, our mines, our fisheries, our agriculture, our renewable resources. We're busy shutting all of those things down on an extreme agenda, and what we're going to do is we're going to replace it with an industry of central planning, of state capitalism, where the state actually subsidizes private sector companies, not private capital. And that's what the IRA does in the extreme in this case. But you know what? The United States government's not out there hawking that thing very much. The Congressional Budget Officer said this is going to cost $30, $40 billion out of it. Well, he was clearly underestimating it, because in Canada we're already spending, with 3 plants, over $40 billion on 3 assembly plants. And if you're going to do that, and if you're going to push forward the idea that somehow 100% subsidy on batteries through 2029, and then, by the way, the IRA says in the year after that, I meandered a bit. The IRA after that on the 100% in 2029 goes to 75%, and then in the next year it goes to 50%, and then the next year it goes to 25%. Over those years, that's the percentage of the taxpayer is going to pay and cover in the cost of the batteries in the IRA. That's supposedly what's in these contracts, because the minister has said they're the same as the IRA. Love to see that publicly. I'm sure the public would like to see that we're 100% subsidizing Volkswagen, so that Volkswagen has an increase in profitability in the cars they sell by 40%. 100%, 75%, all that. And then in 2033, there is no subsidy. At least that's when the IRA part of this ends, if it doesn't extend. But we know that the minister has said publicly, if the U.S. Congress extends the IRA, then they'll extend the subsidy. So we can expect that that's in the contract. So these are really jobs that won't exist unless there is $1,000 a household per manufacturer subsidy. And I have to tell you, the people in my riding, as much as they love the auto jobs, are not keen that $1,000 of their tax dollar for Volkswagen, which has more revenue than the government of Canada, that another $1,000 of their taxpayer money for Stellantis is covered, which has more annual revenue than the government of Canada, that we're actually subsidizing companies that have more money than Canada. And the incredible part of this is that the NDP rail on against corporate profits. We hear it all the time in the House. Corporate profits are bad. Well, actually, corporate profits produce the phones that all the NDP use. The computers that they're logged on here are produced through corporate profits and the innovation that comes from it. But if corporate profits are bad, I'm left scratching the few hairs I have left on my head about how that's consistent with taking these companies that are larger than the government of Canada and paying for 40% of the cost of the production of their vehicle, and they get 100% of the profit. Now, you'll say to me, Rick, yeah, but it's helpful because, you know, these cars will be sold in Canada. They'll help reduce our carbon footprint in Canada. You know what? You'd be wrong. And I know it's an assumption you would make, but do you know that Volkswagen does not have an assembly plant of either an internal combustion engine or an EV plant in this country? And you know how many plants they plan to build assembling EVs or internal combustion engines in Canada? I'm asking the members on the government side, please tell me, in all of this great work and negotiations and fine contract discussions you've done that you're trying to hide, how many commitments did you get to have a battery and then a car assembly plant from Volkswagen or Stellantis in Canada? I'm listening. Wow, they usually heckle me, but they're silent now. Because you know what the answer is? It's zero. It's zero, not a single plant. Now, prove me wrong. Release the contract. Maybe it's in the contract. But because of the silence, I suspect it's not. And you know why it's not? Because Volkswagen's already said where these batteries are going. You know where they're going? Come on, I know you're listening intently. I know the government members know where they're going. Help me out here. Help me out here. Where are they going? Oh, Now, I know they're laughing. The camera won't show them, but where they're going is Tennessee. So they're going to get trucked EV batteries, heavy EV batteries for an EV Volkswagen car are going to be put in an 18-wheeler driven by diesel to Tennessee. Really helps the carbon footprint of developing that EV vehicle. And then the vehicle's assembled in Tennessee. And guess where vehicles assembled in Tennessee are sold? Come on. Garnet, you must know where vehicles in Tennessee are sold. They're sold in the United States.
Exactly.
So the Canadian taxpayer is subsidizing vehicles to be sold in the United States. Now, sign me up for that deal, say the Liberals. I'll subsidize almost half the car. I'll give it to foreign multinationals so they can make more profit, and they're supported by their NDP coalition partner in this, will increase the profitability of these foreign multinationals by almost 40% on each vehicle. We'll do that so that we can sell the cars in the United States. And you know what? Let's assume that President Biden, the Republicans, and President Biden, the Democrats and Republicans see the light, and they discover that they can't afford to subsidize these anymore. Now, they're not really subsidizing them because we're the ones that are out there marketing and saying, don't go to the U.S., so they don't actually have to pay for what's in the IRA. We're the ones paying for the IRA, Canadian taxpayers. But let's just assume that all of this is true. Now, your Stellantis and your Volkswagen and your Ford in Quebec, and when the subsidies end in 2033, and you now have to pay for 100% of the cost out of your own capital, of your own shareholders, for the heaviest part of the vehicle, the battery, where do you think that's going? Tell me, you think they're going to continue to truck from Windsor to St. Thomas, Ontario, and Quebec? You think they're going to continue to truck those batteries to the mid and southern U.S. to be assembled in the plants? If you believe that that'll exist without more subsidy, then you've never worked in a business. You've worked for a not-for-profit, maybe you've done good work at a not-for-profit and a community charity, but that wouldn't be the case of the way it goes on. It doesn't work that way. Once the subsidy ends, the biggest part of any kind of business like this, I was in the retail business for many years, large retailer, and the biggest cost to the people whose products we sold and to our operations was actually trucking the stuff around, moving the product, touching the product, moving it from place to place, putting it in an 18-wheeler. That's what costs money. That's what eats up your margin. And the last thing you want to do is touch the product and move it halfway across the North American continent to be put in another vehicle. So the earnestness with which my colleague from Windsor West, who I do quite admire, believes that these jobs will continue to exist after that, I believe the only way they will continue to exist is if there was a clause in these contracts that said, you know what? You have to pay back every dollar of these subsidies the minute you move this plant out of Canada. Now, anyone who knows how to negotiate a contract, now I'm not a lawyer, but I am a corporate strategist, marketer, been on boards. I would never let my company and my government sign a contract that says that after receiving $15 billion of taxpayer money, you're free to go. Adios. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. That's what this government has probably done in these contracts. Whoops.